So then I just wanted to show this image of the use of the children as weapons. And then I'm just going to make a few closing comments. I know some people need to go.
You love me now? Stop it. This is crazy. I don't want to be away from Snooks anymore. She needs to have a normal life. She needs friends. Kids her age. She needs to go to school. I can teach her better than any school. They're isolating her. Let's give her one. If you can't understand our need for security, then you have an actual opinion. Get a lawyer. I'm wrong. So what, you're leaving me because I wanted to keep my family safe? Is that it? I should have told you this earlier. I'm with the group now.
I'm with a group.
The group. The Tribal Revolution. Children living between 12 and 11 days. The health department of safety and security were really covered. Yeah. Yeah. The way to go. Right. Yeah, that looks like I'm a real man. I'm going to take care of the 24/7 reporting on everybody here. I don't accept it.
I don't know how many of you folks know about Clark Rockefeller, but he wasn't a Rockefeller. He made up his last name, but he managed to fool all kinds of people in all kinds of situations. Not just women he preyed upon as partners, but he'd get himself security clearances. He'd get into really serious workplaces, and he was like the Great Imposter. If you remember the story of the Great Imposter. But this was the example of the playing of the custody card. So yeah, if you turn the lights back on, and I want to finish with just a couple comments, and then we'll have time for questions and discussion for people who can stick around for a few minutes. I can tell some people really need to get going. But first of all, I'm a parent. I'm sure a lot of people in the room are parents. I think it's important to be aware that our kids are taking just hours and hours and hours of these kinds of images in every week of their lives. And so we've got to be talking to our kids about the images that they're seeing. And we've also got to keep complaining in all kinds of ways about what media are subjecting our kids to, particularly the really uncritical, the kinds of images we were seeing first. And our main leverage point is really through advertisers. The stations that carry things will have some receptivity to complaints. It's worth calling stations to complain. But the main place to send your complaints is emails to advertisers on shows where you really shows, movies, whatever, where you're really disturbed by the collusion with domestic violence or the promotion of domestic violence in the piece. Even MTV has sometimes been affected by certain kinds of public pressure, so it really makes sense to put a lot of pressure on. And then people who are trying to do the constructive, the positive media work are generally working on no money at all. So it's another place where you can have a constructive impact, is look for ways to make contributions to documentary making and other healthy media projects. And I want to refer people to the Media Education Foundation. Some of you may already be aware of them, but if not, look them up on the web. Media Education Foundation. They create, what they're dedicated to is creating videos that do critical analysis of modern media. And they're primarily designed for high school and college audiences. Although they're really great for adults to use. They've just come out with a new one on the politics of professional sports in the United States, called Not Just a Game. It's just a really fascinating video that just premiered a few days ago. And so I really encourage you to look at the Media Education Foundation catalog. And what I finally wanted to say was, I think this really points to the importance of finding very, very proactive ways in workplaces to be having the discussions about domestic violence, and to be, I think we should put around workplaces to some extent the bad images from media in order to draw people's attention to, you know, with critical comments on them, in order to draw people's attention to what they're absorbing without even realizing they're absorbing. Because this is the norm. This is what, and I mean, we showed the pieces that were, some of the pieces that were sort of more educationally positive, but that's not what people are seeing. What people are mostly seeing is the love the way you lie, and they're hearing the Mel Gibson stuff, but with all the excuses rather than with analysis. And so if there's silence around the workplace, then what's going to predominate in people's minds is all the really destructive stuff they're hearing. So we've really got to be proactive and put these criticisms, this analysis of media on the table. We've got to have accurate information about domestic violence and about the abuse of women on the table, and we've got to keep finding ways to get to young people so that before they're ever out in the work world, they've already had a chance to get some constructive, positive education and have been taught some media literacy, some ability to think clearly about what they're seeing. We're going to be around for I'm going to be around for about 20 minutes of questions. I want to let people go who need to go. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope this has given you a lot of interesting things to think about. It has certainly given me a lot of interesting things to think about. And thanks again to Sarah Cortez for preparing the media presentation. And let's questions. It doesn't have to be questions either. Comments, thoughts. I don't want people to feel like they have to frame it as a question. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, have you seen the redo of the Big Piano and then video? It's out. 2 kids redid this whole video, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing, very powerful, and the words are all changed, and the video is changed. And so they do the same song, but instead of saying "I love the way you lie," I think her words are "I will survive." And that's all the other ones. But I know.
You know how we look it up?
I got it on some of my emails. I just want to go to Andrea. I'll forward it to you, and do you want to
Sure.
forward it around?
Okay. Yep.
Jess, I think I sent it to you. Did I send it to you? Yeah, I'll do that. Amazing. So I recommend it. It's a good contrast.
Thank you. That's excellent.
Mark, do you have
Thanks so much.
I do.
You do?
I do.
I don't know how many people saw the article in the Globe, it was a few days ago, about the father of a daughter who was killed by her partner. And he's got this foundation now where he goes in and he'll put video cameras in people's houses. Well, the thing about that article, what was really disturbing in the article about this wonderful story about this guy doing this to people, is that it said his daughter was killed in a domestic violence dispute. Not the daughter was murdered by her partner, but the daughter was killed in a domestic violence dispute. This is the Boston Globe.
Thank you. And that way of describing what happened has, in general, not changed. It's not just the Boston Globe. It has, in general, not changed. I just clipped something out of the newspaper just about 2 months ago that I read to my audience with a guy who murdered his wife, and it said a domestic argument that got out of hand. It got out of hand. In other words, the argument has the ability. The argument is like this thing that has the ability to kill people. And they need to hear about it from us. That's the thing. The media outlets, the Globe needs to hear about it from us, and then the Globe's advertisers need to hear about it from us. So, yeah.
How would you explain the love the way you lie? How do you explain that to children and a teenager? Especially Rihanna's verse. I mean, Eminem's verse, it's easier for me to explain. I have a hard time explaining it. It doesn't make sense, it's silly, but they still hear it and they still see it. She's so beautiful, and it just kind of sucks them in that it's this drama romantic thing. And how do you explain it and counterbalance that?
I would love to hear other people's thoughts about this. I'll share a couple thoughts, but I'd love to hear what other people think. One of the first things I want to talk about is how come the men are always clothed and the women are naked? But that's because that's a good starting point for the whole discussion. And because I find it hard to talk about anything that Rihanna says or does in the video without first saying, and she's basically naked. And, but then the next thing that I want to say is she in any way expressing the woman's feelings, or is she actually expressing the man's fantasy about the woman's feelings? So that's the first place I would tend to go with that discussion. This is an entirely male perspective on domestic violence. The female perspective on domestic violence never enters that video at any point. Even when we're seeing the woman crying, we're seeing the woman crying through a distinctly male gaze. And we get past it very quickly. We get much more visceral looks, as I was saying before, at his suffering. That's much more. I mean, he's in the field all the time. Eminem is in the field all the time. And then we're back to the actors. But he's always, it's all about what he's going through. The whole thing, this wife beater, it's all about what he's going through. And that's what tends to happen. This tends to get replicated in various ways in real life. The discussions about domestic, I'm not saying it always happens, but I've seen it happen many times where discussions about domestic violence veered off into a focus on what the abuser is going through, what things are like for him. Yeah, go ahead.
Just on that topic,
Yeah.
I have a 15-year-old daughter who heard the song on the radio and had a discussion about it. And I love what you said about it. I'm going to go back and try and have another discussion. But one of the things she told me that I found really disturbing was she was sort of upset with some of her friends because they were all blaming Rihanna for what happened to her. You know, the young girls were talking about it and they were supportive of boyfriend and felt like somehow she caused this. And that to me was very disturbing that her friends, you know, I think my daughter's attitude was pretty good, but her friends were, you know, definitely
The woman blaming habits go so deep. And I was hearing a woman the other day, really, you know, feminist, fiery woman saying, you know, and it's so appalling that Rihanna would be involved in this video as someone who is a victim of domestic violence herself. And I said, I really don't agree. I said, I think we should be criticizing Rihanna as a celebrity, not as a formerly battered woman. What's outrageous about this is that she lent herself to it as a celebrity. I don't think that I don't think we have the right to give her any special responsibility growing out of the fact that she's been battered. I don't think being battered gives you special responsibilities. But being a celebrity does give you special responsibilities. And so I'd like to see us really focus on that. And that's one of the ways to get away from try to steer it away from the victim blaming thing. But thank you, it's really, really helpful to say, yeah.
Well, just to follow up on what you were saying, back when it first happened, I think it was the Globe, they did a survey of Boston area public schools, was it, public and private? And at that point, 52% of students thought she caused it. So we're not talking... Right, but they caused it. And also, I've talked to my daughter about this, and she brought up a good point. She's 22 now, in college, but she said that this is part of Rihanna still being a victim. You know, this is still causing everything in her life because she really is still suffering.
That's a really good point, that these are part of the effects of the abuse that we're seeing. Yeah, thank you.
You can't blame the victim again.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think that's